All right. Good morning, everybody. We're 2 past the hour. Let's get this going. Welcome to the webinar with Peter Backman. As always, we are organizing these webinars to help the food service industry forward and get insights from people with a lot of experience. And today, Peter is one of them. But before we jump into that, I would please explain a little bit, of course, what Apicbase does for those who don't know. Obviously, some of you will, of course, know Apicbase. But as you know, Apicbase is since 2017 working on software to help food businesses contribute to zero waste and a healthy bottom line. Everything we built, everything we've developed is exactly to make sure that our customers can go for less waste and more margins. And the platform we've built for that is a vast back of house platform that kind of takes the recipes as at its core and solves all different kinds of problems that our customers face, such as procurement, inventory management, central production unit, production planning, menu planning, whatever, name it, whatever your issue is in the back of house or whatever tasks you want to streamline, Apicbase will have a solution for that. And in these times, actually, we are, very, very, let's say, happy to be alive because everybody is almost very much entrenched in AI. And I think last year on our Apex 2025 event, we launched the first, let's say, features of AI in Apicbase. And by now, I think tens of our customers are already moving into the features that we've built, like recipe import, ingredient enrichment, menu planning. All of these features are already live and used by our customers. And as a CEO today, it's fantastic to lead a company like Apicbase because the speed of which we are, let's say, launching new features is incredible. And AI is, of course, at the center of these things to make, let's say, the use of Apicbase easier, to make life in the restaurant easier, and to make sure that all of these tasks that you need to do to make sure that you can serve your guests, that they go faster and faster. Now, obviously, if you are not yet in talks with us about the AI features of Apicbase, feel free to reach out. I think it is an exciting time to see all of these evolutions, and I'm happy to invite all of you to take part in this journey. Now, today we are talking with Peter Backman. Peter Backman is an expert in the food service industry for 40 years. He has done tremendous work in the space, and recently also has a lot of newsletters that he's sending out with a lot of data and insights into the market. And he's actually working for a lot of different projects. And today he will be talking about delivery in the restaurant space. And of course, as a specialist, I have nothing more to add to that than to give the floor to Peter. And Peter, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Okay, so we can begin. Thank you very much for asking me to speak. And hopefully over the next 20 minutes, we'll uncover quite a lot about what's happening in the world of restaurants and delivery. Just a little bit about me, just to add to what Carl has already said. I have two hats. One is Peter Backman consultant in the food service sector. I provide strategic advice. I act as an NED. I speak in public and so on. The other part of my business is the delivery world, which is focused on the global delivery space. And in that, I connect suppliers, primarily tech, but a whole load of other suppliers who work in the delivery space and I connect them with restaurants through my newsletter. I have podcasts. I run networking events under Delivery Heads Up title. I write white papers in conjunction with my clients, and I have other services like the Delivery Surge Index, which we will come to. So that's a little bit about me. I won't go into any more detail. I will have connections on my last slide. What I want to do is to talk to you about why your next competitor isn't a restaurant. Then we'll look at restaurant delivery in a wider context, why restaurant delivery works and where it doesn't work, and then look at three strategic options in the delivery space, particularly for restaurants. So why is your next competitor not going to be a restaurant? Well, very simply, going back 50 or so years, there were two segments to the market. Restaurants serve food that they have cooked and they served it to you, or retailers provided food for you to cook at home. Two distinct elements. But the whole thing is much more complicated than that. And that the space between those two extremes is now filled by a whole variety of different options. Meal kits that deliver food to you according to a subscription model. You go into a restaurant and take the food away. You go into a supermarket and you buy a ready meal. A whole range of different options that mean that the space between the two extremes is now much more complicated. And one of those spaces is what I want to talk about today. But the lesson here is that no particular element in this space competes in its own area. It's competing with all the other parts that go and make up this zone between restaurants and supermarkets or retailers in general. And delivery is just one of those elements. And that's why restaurants are finding that they're not just competing with other restaurants. So delivery, just to put it into some historical context, and I won't go into a lot of detail here, but I find it's quite helpful. Before 2010, delivery was a world for gentlemen, where things happened slowly, where delivery was done by the restaurant to a fairly select market. Most restaurants didn't do it. Then with the onset of the real value of finding customers on the internet, coupled with brands like DoorDash that started doing the actual delivery, there was a Wild West emerged, where it was a grab to gain a market share, dominance in the market. That model was hugely expensive and very unprofitable. So it wasn't surprising that the market started rationalizing, probably towards the period when COVID was winding down. Rationalization was building up, where platforms started to concentrate on profitability and making all sorts of different advances using tech, creating income through not only through delivery, but through platform effects and so on. And we're now entering a phase when the benefits are being reaped from the companies that have been able to maintain their position in the market. And we're now entering a period where there is increasing consolidation in the market, and that's going to be a leitmotif for the next few years. Sorry, excuse me. Just to show what delivery looks like, and if you look at it from a national or a local regional prospect, the picture is normally limited to 3 or 4 brands, but there are many brands active in the market. Here are about 15 brands that have reported their results for Q4 2025. So they're part of my surge index, showing not only the brands in the middle here in black, but also how their performance varies quite considerably, partly for regional reasons. Most of these brands are regional. Uber Eats, Delivery Hero, and increasingly DoorDash are developing a much wider footprint globally. The growth rates in various regions varies, with the Middle East and Asia Pacific around about 20% a year. Europe, on the other hand, is much slower for a number of reasons, mainly cultural reasons playing out internationally. If we look at Europe and delivery in Europe, there are differences between the countries. The UK is the most developed market in Europe. That's not because I live here, but it's a fact of life. And the differences between the countries, and here I'm just looking at the total GTV, the value of delivery, restaurant delivery sold to consumers. That's what this measures here. There are differences, and if you look at them on a per capita basis, they're even starker. So Spain, the Netherlands are probably more important than would appear from here on a per capita basis. The differences are related to the degree to which country is tech oriented, to attitudes towards online ordering generally, attitudes towards food, eating out as opposed to eating in, and shopping habits generally. All of those have an influence on what is happening in each country and the extent to which it adopts online restaurant delivery. Within that, not all platforms are the same. So again, looking at Europe, and if we look at GTV, that's the purple, the plum, I'm told it's a plum colored the plum colored elements are representing GTV. So Just Eat and Uber Eats have the highest level of GTV. The number of countries that companies are active in is different. Just Eat is the fewest, DoorDash has the most, and Uber Eats is somewhere in between. Delivery Hero is closer to Just Eat Takeaway, and the $1 billion per country is also variable. So what I'd like you to take away from this is that no two platforms are the same when it comes to the way that they are integrated into their markets, and that influences the way that they operate and their relationships with restaurants. I've got the UK here for 2 reasons. One, it's because I've been studying it for the longest. I've been measuring it since 2012, but also until very recently, Deliveroo and Just Eat split out their numbers for the UK and Ireland, that information is probably no longer going to be available because both companies have now been acquired by larger entities who are probably not going to present this information anymore. So I'll have to be tracking this in another way. However, the key point here is that the market in the early 2010s started slowly, then started accelerating. COVID gave it a huge boost, and it's now been leveling off again. So delivery is on the rise. Europe is not the fastest growing market by any means, and there are a lot of different players active in the market. So that's delivery in context. If you look at what is happening and how it's working, then it's disrupting the market. It's disrupting relationships with customers, between restaurants and their customers. It's creating new markets such as ghost kitchens, virtual brands, and it is changing the way that restaurants actually look at their market. Whether a restaurant should look at delivery as a totally distinct channel or whether it should integrate delivery into its operations is a question for every restaurant to answer. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. But a core element of delivery is its embrace of technology. The delivery platforms position themselves as tech companies, not only capturing customers, but relating to restaurants, telling them what to supply, relating to the gig riders, recruiting the gig riders, monitoring the gig riders, directing the gig riders to the final customer. All of that is what tech does. And I divide tech into two, really. I've just been talking about the soft tech element, the software, the growing use of AI throughout that software program, the use of data, using data to inform decisions, and soft technology changing the way that kitchens automate. And then there's hard tech, less developed. So drones, delivery robots are all in place, but their use is constrained by a whole range of practical issues, and the extent to which they use varies from country to country, from town to town. And then within hard tech, there is also kitchen automation, automatic fryers, and so on. So this is a whole element of technology in the kitchen. When it comes to the customer, looking at the other end, customers for restaurant delivery fall into three blocks. First of all are customers who go to a delivery platform, and that is where they make their restaurant delivery decision. They go to the platform, scroll through, decide what they want. And then there are other customers who want a particular brand. They may order directly from the restaurant, or they may go onto the platform and use the platform to direct them to the brand that they want. Maybe at each purchase decision, there may be 2 or 3 brands, but basically these people are loyal to their brand. And then there are people who are very much convenience driven. They've been offered a deal. They know what they want today, but tomorrow they don't know what they want. So they are much more fluid in their decision making. All of this then gives challenges for restaurants when it comes to dealing with platforms. There are the financial and economic issues that the commission rate they pay, it's high. In a business, restaurant business, with its gross profitability in the low digits percentages, has to be paying 20, 25, 30, even more than that percentage in commission, and then on top of that there are all sorts of other fees that added on. So it's not unusual for restaurants to be paying well over 30% for each delivery order that they receive, and that clearly places challenges on them. There are issues about the data that the customer provides to the platform, which is by and large not shared by the platform with the restaurant. So there is an asymmetry when it comes to data, and the platforms have more data than the restaurants do, which causes frictions. By capturing customers through a platform, the restaurant has much less of a relationship with the customer. The relationship becomes restricted to the food which is actually delivered in the brown paper bag to the customer, and alongside that, the restaurant does not have visibility of the customer to nearly the same extent as they do in a dine-in experience or in a takeaway experience, where the customer actually presents themselves to the restaurant. And then finally, because the relationship is much more fluid, there is a danger that the brand gets diluted through the delivery relationship. That's not always the case, and there are some brilliant cases of companies that really promote their brand to the customer. In the UK, Dishoom is probably outstanding in that respect, with a clear and positive relationship with its delivery customers. So working with a platform is good because it produces additional revenue, but it also has challenges. And restaurants need to be able to adapt to those challenges. They need to change their recipes to match what is needed so that it delivers well. They need to manage multiple channels, because if there are 2 or 3 platforms being used in the kitchen, there can be confusion on the screens that are used. That restaurants are used to a little bit of flexibility when it comes to when they actually produce the food. A few minutes here, a few minutes there doesn't matter. In a delivery context, it does. And so scheduling becomes very important. And overall, delivery causes operational pressures in the kitchen. So I've been a bit negative about delivery, but it's a positive. It's opened up a whole new line of business, a new line of profitability, and it allows restaurants to become more nimble, whether they want to use a first-person channel or a third-person channel, hybrid, omni-channel. There are various ways that restaurants can flexibility when it comes to strategically building delivery into their business. Delivery helps restaurants grow the top line, and although customer touch points become more difficult because for the reasons I've explained, it is possible, and it's possible to reach out to more customers through delivery. And finally, there's the challenge of growing the bottom line, but the restaurant can invest in efficiencies. It can invest in tech to drive those efficiencies, to provide them with more information, and evolving capabilities that mean that restaurant delivery is not something difficult that has to be managed somehow, but something that is really positive when it comes to the top line, the bottom line, and relationships with customers. So that is my take on delivery. This is how you can contact me, Peter Backman, peter@peterbackmanfs.com, and there's a very brief summary of my services. So that's that's really what I have come to say. I'm now. Okay. We're now together again.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that.
The technology is always challenging. I hope that hasn't taken away from what I've said.
Thank you very much, Peter, for this presentation and for these insights into the delivery world and what it adds to the restaurant world. And on that, I actually I have a few questions, and some of the questions came from the audience. But to start it off, one of the slides you presented was the let's say the volume and the size of the different markets and the total value or order value that has been done through delivery. And clearly there's, the larger countries are on top, and you have quite a long tail. Obviously, our viewers are also from Belgium, the Netherlands, and Norway, and every place. My question to you is, do you have insights in whether or not these long tail countries, if you want to call them like that, already reached their full potential, or is there still a big growth margin to do more delivery and to put more into that channel?
Yeah, first of all, apologies to Belgium.
No worries.
I think it's probably number 11 on the list.
Probably.
And it's a function of population as much as anything else. So you wouldn't be surprised if that there is this long tail. There's also a long tail through quite a lot of the companies are still relatively poor. But the question that you really asked is, what is the potential here? And there's undoubtedly potential in each market. It's not huge. It's not doubling the size of the market anymore, and but it's still there because it's up to delivery platforms and restaurants working in conjunction to grow the demand. From the delivery platform's point of view, what they're increasingly doing is getting business that is not related to restaurant delivery. So Uber is a prime example of that, with their ride hailing. The two work in conjunction. DoorDash is becoming very masterful in creating other routes to delivery, but all the platforms are working on grocery delivery as well, which doesn't benefit restaurants, except that the more people who are ordering online and bulking orders, whether it's with the restaurant or a grocer, means that there is more potential there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for that. Another question that I had during your presentation is one of the slides that you showed was a slide where you, let's say, define different segments apart from the restaurant itself. You have ghost kitchens and dark kitchens and all of these.
Yes.
One question I have about that is, do you think, or do you feel that there is still, let's say, place for ghost kitchens in the market, or is the market actually just restaurants also doing delivery? Because what I've seen over the past years is that there is a lot of ghost kitchen startups and businesses that tried to make it, but they're all struggling to find a profitable business model. While obviously the market of delivery is growing. So where is that market? Is it just the restaurants delivering, or is there really a market for ghost kitchens?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yes, there is a market for ghost kitchens. It's not what was being put forward 5, 6, 7 years ago, when there would be a ghost kitchen on every street corner. I'm exaggerating, but that hasn't come to pass. There are a number of reasons for that, not least of which is it's just been difficult to get people to work in them. But ghost kitchens do have a role. They allow companies that have got excess demand to offload that into a space that is lower cost for them. It allows businesses to try out new areas. It allows businesses to just to try out new brands and so on. But that is probably more, those things are more tactical than strategic. So there's a lot of churn when it comes to ghost kitchens. And there are two types of ghost, well, there are probably quite a lot of different types, but two main types. One is a ghost kitchen, which is purely on its own. It has nothing, it doesn't do anything other than cook food and that's what it does. And then there are ghost kitchens related to an operation that's got a presence, what I call a high street presence to the customer. And in the back of the house, they're cooking loads of other things that are not on the fascia that the customer sees. And again, there are opportunities there. So the ghost kitchen model that was originally foreseen 5 years ago is not really moving forward at pace, but there is an opportunity for ghost kitchens, definitely.
Yeah. So what I hear in conclusion of this question is there's basically three types. You have restaurants doing delivery of their own food. You have restaurants, creating maybe virtual brands on the back of the operations they already have. And then there is the typical ghost kitchen, which is the real container, no front of house, just virtual brands.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I agree. And it's the last one, which is what most people talk about when they talk about ghost kitchens.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Some questions from the audience. One question is, do you see white label providers, not the aggregator platforms, but smaller restaurant SaaS players, providing the tech to the restaurants to grow their own channels? Do you see those gaining traction in Europe?
I see all sorts of things happening in tech. Which ones work and which ones don't work, I'm not sure. But white labeled solutions in general are really what restaurants would like to see. So there is pressure on them, and there's demand for them. But each white label, whether it's order capture or delivery riders, comes up against the power of the platforms, and they've got huge amount of power, vast pockets of money to set against what restaurants can do. So there's a tension there. The restaurants really would like white label to work, and there are lots of cases where it is working, but is it going to take over the market? I don't think so, unfortunately.
And could you say that the main driver of this white labeling could be that restaurants want to have control over their customers, their guests, the data flow? Is this, let's say, the main driver in this segment?
Yeah, well, it is one of the main drivers. The other one is the cost, lower cost. So, but restaurants typically before delivery didn't really know who their customers were. They recognized them when they walked through the door, but they didn't have a lot of analysis of who they were, how often they shopped, wherever else they went. Now they know that data is collectible, so they would like it.
Of course. I understand. All right, thank you very much for that answer. The other one that we have is, hi, Peter. What's your advice on dealing with order accuracy? As you don't see your customer and can't handle directly in case of errors, this has huge customer impact. Not even talking about the chargeback discussions with your delivery partner.
Yes, it's a whole area of discussion on its own. So it happens in a restaurant. It happens, and it's easy to put right. You know, the customer says, "Where are my fries? Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I'll bring them out." Or this is overcooked. We'll take it away and we'll job done. You may offer them a glass of wine if it's particularly serious. However, in a delivery space, you don't have that option, and so the chargeback or you can have it. You don't. We won't charge you for it. Is the default option, and it doesn't cost the delivery company any money at all. It's the restaurant that bears the brunt. So sometimes it's the restaurant's fault. Sometimes it's not the restaurant's fault. It may be, you know, it was delivered very late. That may not be the restaurant's fault, or it may be that the rider didn't handle it properly and the product looks awful when the customer opens it. So I'm just describing the problem. What the solution is, I don't know. First of all, restaurants need to be able to demonstrate that what left their restaurant was what was ordered, and that's why in-store cameras and those sort of mechanisms perform a useful function. But the customer is not interested in going through a whole trail of proof. They just say, "Well, I ordered the product and it wasn't what I wanted."
They don't care who is in fault. They just want their food.
They want their food. Offer them some money, and they say, "Oh, okay, it wasn't what I wanted, but I've got my money." But that's not really producing a satisfied customer either. So I don't know what the solution actually is. Well, I do know what the solution is. The solution is to get the customer to come into your restaurant and buy the food and eat it in the restaurant. But that's not what we're talking about. So I don't know the answer to the question.
All right. Thank you. I think it's a valuable, very, very valuable insight about that, basically. And I have another question that came in before the webinar started. It actually nicely works together with your last phrase of your answer is make sure your guests come into the restaurants and eat it at the restaurant. When a restaurant considers doing delivery, should they worry about cannibalism, part of their own audience that is not coming back to the restaurant but just eating at home, or is this largely a myth?
I think from what I see, it is largely a myth, but it exists. And it's a particular problem when you're getting into delivery. Suddenly your in-store sales decline by 5-10% or whatever. But once it's become normal to do delivery, then restaurants seem to be able to manage that reduction. So I don't think it is a major issue ongoing, but it can be an issue in the early stages.
And when you look at another question, when you look at the P&L of a restaurant and from your experience, can you give us a bit of insights on what the expected growth is on their P&L and on their bottom line of the delivery, even though, albeit that there will be a slight decline or maybe a big decline in restaurant dining?
So if we're looking at a single restaurant or a small restaurant chain, then taking on delivery normally should and normally produces growth. But after a while, again, that settles down and it just becomes normalized. So delivery seems to take a growing share of a restaurant's total sales. And it's not unusual for it to be 30% and for the restaurant to want it to be more. And that, of course, then raises the other issue about, well, does the restaurant carry on in that way with delivery becoming more and more important, or does it, in effect, become a ghost kitchen, or open a ghost kitchen somewhere else? So this whole range of the questions that are being asked, and they're very good questions, are not really answerable with a single answer. It varies. What are your conditions? What's your position? What's your expectations? Yeah, I can't give a clear answer to that, except that if you start doing delivery, and of course most restaurants nowadays have either decided to do delivery or not do delivery and are doing it, and those that are doing it are finding that there's growth.
I guess what I hear is it comes still down to the entrepreneur, to the owners, to the business managers to take decisions based on whatever comes is thrown at them, and they need to be very agile, as every entrepreneur needs to be.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And although restaurants complain about not having this information, as I pointed out before, the information they didn't have before, but the platform does, and it gives the platform a lot of negotiating space. But nowadays, I think restaurants seem to have more and more information, not necessarily just from their delivery, but through all the systems that they have in place.
Yeah. I see that we are running short of time, so I will take one more question that just came in from the audience. Hi, Peter. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. In your research over the years, do you find people are largely loyal to their delivery app, for example, Uber One or Deliveroo, or is there some truth behind people switching apps to find the best deals? And to which extent do you think there is cannibalization amongst those apps, if any at all?
Yeah, okay. So some good questions, but I think the simple answer is there isn't a lot of switching between apps. People might have 3 apps on their phone, but they basically only use one.
Yeah.
So it becomes a battle between the apps, and that is a feature of the markets, not only in Europe but around the world. Which app grabs the customer's attention, and that's another topic, but yeah, that it's a very important one.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Maybe one last question just to top it off and make it very contemporary, because otherwise we're not very much into the moment. We haven't talked about AI. And maybe one question there is, beyond demand forecasting, which is kind of a very hot topic, where do you see AI making the biggest practical impact right now in restaurants, both in delivery and also in traditional food service?
Is this your question, Carl, or is this a question from the audience?
Well, this might be quite slightly inspired by the Apicbase team.
Yeah, sure. AI is embedded in so many bits of software that customers use. So, and it, in a sense, to an extent, they don't know actually aware of it. The restaurants actually saying, we're going to use AI to do this, I think is probably limited. And my reason behind that is my observation over many years that restaurants are people businesses. They're not tech businesses, and people businesses employ people. And so the typical person in a restaurant environment is a hospitality person and not a tech person. So the restaurant industry is a slow adopter of technology, a bit chaotic, a bit driven by the seat of the pants. But having said all of that, AI is going to become more and more a potent force in the restaurant sector. It's how individual restaurants manage it that I think is going to be crucial to how successful a restaurant is.
Mm-hmm. Maybe to add on that, I think you're absolutely right. And I think with what we see is with AI, we will help our customers that their employees, people's people, as you call them, can stay people's people, and that AI can take over part of their tedious and non-people's job. So that's for sure a big advantage, I think, of AI in the future.
Definitely. I mean, outside of the food service space, I'm also looking at AI and how it's used. So it's really a topic for the moment, as you said earlier.
It is. So that now we've crossed that off our list. We've come to the end of the webinar. Thank you very much, Peter, for your insights and for answering the questions. Very insightful as well. I think these were 45 very well spent minutes. Thank you everybody for tuning in also, and just because of course we think insights are always valuable. We've already planned a next webinar, which will be the 24th of April in a month from now. And this will be more product driven, more Apicbase related. And what we've done is we've kind of looked into all of the different ways that Apicbase can help you to structure and organize and reduce the tedious work of counting. We'll be having a great webinar, just very much focused on how to easily, quickly, and swiftly do counts and inventory management in Apicbase and in your restaurants. So feel free to already register, but I'm sure our team will send out some mails to remind you of this webinar, 24th of April. But for now, Peter, thank you very much for joining us. Audience, thank you very much for tuning in and staying with us, and see you next time.